Hello. Today I'm going to be discussing Arthur Morgan and Ellie Williams, who I believe to be gaming's greatest bad guys. I've played through the entirety of Red Dead Redemption 2. I hope to play Red Dead 1 one day. And I've played through The Last of Us Remastered, The Last of Us Part 1 on PS5, and The Last of Us Part 2. So, pretty well educated on these games. I'm going to start with Arthur, and then continue on to Ellie, and compare 4 different aspects of them, and that should explain to you why I find them to be some of the greatest characters in gaming history. For Arthur, first category I want to hit on is his dialogue. He doesn't speak much, but when he does, it's extremely meaningful, and you see it definitely get more meaningful as the game progresses, especially in Chapter 6. He is quieter for health reasons and just because he's trying to listen and watch his back. But when he does choose to open his mouth, it's to say something and it's to make a point. Whether that point is received by others like Dutch and Micah is a whole other subject. But it's when he says something, most of the time people do listen, or they should. One of my favorite quotes by him is, "We're more ghosts than people." And I think another cutscene in the game that really shows us a side of Arthur that we maybe don't even see in the rest of the game is the cutscene with Sister at the train station. That just showed us Arthur in a way. He appears more youthful in that cutscene. It's almost like he's a scared little boy, and it makes him really, it rounds him out. I mean, it is a little jarring, but when you think about it more, it was a necessary cutscene. Next topic I will be going on to is their mentors, and for Arthur, that is Dutch Vanderland. Their mentors make them better characters, because they can be great on their own, but they also have to be backed up. I mean, you're only as great as who you're surrounded by, and I don't mean reputation-wise, because Dutch doesn't have the best reputation, but in terms of complexity, dialogue, all the things that apply to Arthur, Dutch is a very well-rounded character as well. And in the earlier chapters of Red Dead Part 2, or Red Dead 2, there is not brotherhood, but it's a mentorship or a father-son relationship between them. And, Arthur goes to Dutch for comfort, for reassurance, and then in the latter chapters, when we don't see him doing that, it's strange. It's like we're on our own, and that's not how it was, and we just can't trust Dutch. And especially the section in Guarma, it not only shows Dutch's shortcomings, but it shows how Arthur has to kind of be his own mentor, and he has to follow the beat of his own drum. He can't trust Dutch anymore because Dutch is done or never was doing things in everyone's best interest. It was always for himself. The next topic I will move on to is Arthur's humanity. I believe Arthur's humanity is given to him through his diagnosis of tuberculosis, and I really don't think it is like prior to that we don't see him having much humanity outside of that. I mean, we see him as a somewhat ruthless outlaw who goes around killing people, stealing from people when he's asked to, or when is necessary. So this illness, it definitely rounds him out, and it makes him just like everyone else. I mean, he's not this big brute who can walk in and, shoot someone off from right off his holster. He's dying. There is no cure, and his lifestyle doesn't help at all. It makes it significantly worse. And so, like I said, that cutscene with Sister really helped nail that in, how he's dying and the constant coughing scenes. I remember when that one mission right after you get back from Guarma, when you're walking through Saint Denis, and you're on your horse and you fall off the side of your horse. I thought I had done something wrong in that moment, but no, and they didn't shy away from that. They could have very easily just been like, "Oh, hey, go to the doctor." Like, Arthur's been coughing lately. Like they could have had Sadie tell him to go to the doctor, but no, they chose to do it in a realistic way. And when you see him cough up blood, it makes him more human. A lot of other games wouldn't give their character a terminal illness, and they wouldn't show it in that way. Final topic I will talk about on Arthur is his legacy arc. His legacy arc is, how do I want to be remembered? And that is where you get the mechanic of low honor versus high honor. It's a little different with Red Dead 2, as near the end of the game, not only do you get a choice on how you want to handle the ending, but it is also some choices taken away from you, as it has to do with your low honor versus high honor standing near the end of the game. But that's what Arthur struggles with. I'd say for after chapter 1, that is what the game is about. It's about how he wants to be remembered, how his actions will affect how others view him, and he has to make those choices. Right. I'm going to move on to Ellie. Her dialogue, like Arthur, they're both somewhat quiet in most situations. However, Ellie in part 1, she speaks for herself, she advocates for herself, she stands up for herself. Her voice is a way to make herself feel more comfortable and be heard, as she's disadvantaged because she's in a world surrounded by adults who think they know better and are not going to bend to anyone else's opinions, especially that of a child who was born in the post-apocalyptic world. But in part 2, she's a lot quieter, and it's when she says something, it's not necessarily for her. It's to make others comfortable, such as a scene in the theater where it's with Jesse and Tommy, and they ask her if she wants to go home, and she's like, yeah, sure. Like, you can tell she's not happy about it, and she said that for them. She didn't say it for herself, because she makes it very clear through her body language what she wants. And I think that's a great way they developed her character. Now, Joel is obviously Ellie's mentor. While many people would like to debate whether Joel is a good or bad person, I fell into Naughty Dog's trap. I think Joel's a good person. He does bad things, but I still think he's a good man at the end of the day. Deep, 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 deep down. Joel, they're both quiet characters. In the first game, Ellie kind of talks to the both of them, at least at the start of the game. Then it kind of switches. Ellie doesn't talk much after the incident with David. And Joel is trying to encourage her to speak like she once did. In the second game, we don't see many interactions between Joel and Ellie. But elephant in the room, as Luke Stevens would say in his video, is the death scene. I think that was magically done. As horrible as it was to watch and as realistic as it is, it was necessary, and I think Ellie as a character, she would have been empty if we just had like another uh, road trip in a sense between Joel and Ellie, or Joel or Ellie and another character. It wouldn't have been the same series. You needed a traumatic event to happen, and you needed that lie to be told at the end of the game. You needed him to say, "I'm telling you the truth," because then what is Ellie fighting for? Just the cure again? It's the same game. I personally think, to sidetrack a little bit, I don't think a game with Tommy and Joel is showing their past and the days right after the outbreak. I don't think that's necessary. I don't want that. This series was never gonna center around Joel, and I don't think it should pivot to do that. Joel, while he can stand alone, he works best with another character. I think the opening part of the game would have been much worse if he didn't have Tess, and the first game would have been, in my opinion, not horrible, but very lackluster and similar to other games released at the time if it was just Joel. Right. What gives Ellie her humanity? Ellie has humanity in the first game because she is a child. She's still innocent, and she is still like a child, very naive, and just is unaware of how gruesome that world can be. And in part 2, she doesn't really change much. I mean, she obviously looks much different, but in terms of personality, she is similar, except she just doesn't talk as much and isn't as open. She is still that little girl in part 2, scared, rash, and selfish. She's scared throughout the whole game. She was terrified after she did what she did in the hospital in Seattle. And she's rash. She makes poor decisions, such as, going after Abby in Santa Barbara. That's also selfish. But she has not changed much as you think she has. Of course, there's new things about her, but she's still scared, and she still has a lot of maturing to do. She's the same, but with more nuance. And it is, if she was still maybe not 19 in part 2, in the second game, if they made her, let's say, 16, she needed that age jump to have that complexity, because they weren't going to do this to a 16-year-old girl. At least I hope not. Naughty Dog. And then, what is Ellie's legacy arc? Ellie struggles throughout the first and second game with the question, will I be remembered if I'm not great? Will anyone remember me if I don't help create this cure? Like, her mom passed away. Marlene dropped her off with Joel. Tess died. Riley died. Joel ended up dying. She is afraid of being alone because that's all she's known. So she thinks maybe she could get people to stick around and not leave, or she could also save people from dying if she creates this cure, and that's why it is so important to her. Now, at the time in the first game, when she was most likely internalizing this issue, she did not know that creating the cure would have killed her. However, I believe even if she knew this, she would still be willing to do it. And it's not, in that circumstance, it's not because she wants to be looked as upon like a hero, but it's because she finds her life to be meaningless if she doesn't do it, because she has no one no one's keeping her around until she develops a deeper relationship with Joel. No one is making her stay. No one will remember her. She's just another person trying to survive. That's why the cure is so important to Ellie. Right. Now, both of the characters together. They're very similar, but they're not direct copies of each other, obviously. And I think it is kind of crazy how they come from such different time periods and different settings, but writers are able to have the same tropes and have the same ideas, but make them appear so different. And it's great. Rockstar and Naughty Dog are amazing studios, and they make amazing characters. So good. I don't know if they can beat Arthur and Ellie, but I'm not gonna say I hope I can because they're my favorites, but I hope they can make people almost as good as them. Obviously, Arthur's chapter has closed. Ellie's is still open. I did not talk about any of the newer details added to Ellie's character from the HBO show, as it's not fully released yet, and I feel like that's just separate from this Ellie, the original Ellie. But love the HBO show. I hope Ellie's chapter, at least in the video game realm, has not closed, because I think a part 3, it's not necessary, but I think it would be a welcome. I'd like it, okay? I don't think it should be made for money. I think it should be made if Neil Druckmann and Haley Gross truly believe they have something to tell, like they've said in interviews. I'm not going to speculate on what that should be. I never will. However, I know if they choose to write it, they got it handled. I won't have to worry. They both have great entries that allowed them to grow. They were not held back by trends in the video game industry. They were not held back by technology. They were allowed to flourish. And even though there were limitations, of course, with Last of Us releasing on the PS3 and Red Dead releasing on the PS4, and obviously now have much greater technology, they weren't limited by that. And I think that is something that a lot of people don't recognize, that technology nor system nor subject matter has to limit a character or a story. Right? That's my video. Love Arthur, love Ellie. Thank you for watching.